The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Madam Speaker, the Government Operations Committee has been gripped by the Arrive scam scandal. The way this government spent $54 million on a glitchy app that didn't work, and the fact that they chose GC Strategies, a two-person company that did no actual IT work and simply subcontracted all the work. How did this happen? Who was responsible? Who had the relationships with GC Strategies? Who created this procurement system that allowed a two-person company that does no IT work to get this contract and to essentially simply be able to receive and subcontract the work? This is the work that the Government Operations Committee has been trying to get to the bottom of. And the government is now intimidating witnesses that spoke out of this committee. Here's what happened. Supposedly there was an ongoing investigation, internal investigation inside the government into what happened in the context of the Arrive CAN procurement. The investigator in this case is not independent. This is an internal investigation. The so-called investigator reports through the existing chain of command within CBSA. He effectively reports to people who could be under a cloud of suspicion in the context of this investigation. Now, on November 7th of this year, two witnesses, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, came before the Government Operations Committee. In response to questions, in particular from Conservatives, they gave devastating testimony. They identified people inside the government that they said were lying, were covering up information. They identified conversations that happened between the minister's office and senior public servants that were filtered to them. Madam Speaker, while other public servants were very reserved and limited in their responses to questions, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano gave very direct and very forthright responses that were critical of actions taken by others, especially more senior people within the chain of command. That happened on November 27th. Surprisingly, almost immediately after that, on November 27th, Mr. McDonald and Utano received a letter saying that they were the subject of internal investigation. They hadn't been notified of this before. Coincidentally, apparently, they were told they were under investigation immediately after they offered critical testimony at committee. Then the government went further and suspended them from their jobs without pay. These senior public servants were suspended without pay, even though this internal investigation has not completed. There's an ongoing internal investigation not complete, and yet two people have been suspended without pay. Now, this is very suspicious. You have the government under a cloud of suspicion over this procurement. So they have an internal investigator, but the internal investigator has not even completed the investigation but has submitted interim findings that apparently point the finger at people who have been critical of the same senior public servants who this investigator, in fact, is subject to. And they've been suspended without pay. This very clearly, given the timelines, looks like retaliation against public servants who have spoken out about the Arrive scam scandal. So we have a big problem here. We have the underlying issue of corruption in the Arrive scam contracting, $54 million, a company that did no actual work, just subcontracted all the work. But then we have people that have provided testimony about it, not the testimony the government wanted to hear apparently, suddenly suspended without pay. How does the government justify retaliating against witnesses who criticize them?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, we expect procurement processes to be properly followed and that any person who commits wrongdoing faces the appropriate consequences. And as my colleague knows, the President of the CBSA has referred allegations of misconduct received in 2022 to its Professional Integrity Division, who has been actively working on its administrative investigation since then. The President of the CBSA has already implemented changes in how the agency manages and oversees procurement. Better controls and oversight have been put in place, including those with procurement authority in headquarters retaking their training. Also, having a senior committee review every task authorization and centralizing procurement responsibilities within the organization. These controls will be calibrated over time with a fuller understanding of what happened and why. This will also be informed by the internal review that is ongoing with respect to the contract documents associated with ArriveCan. The CBSA has also suspended their contracts with 3 companies, including GC Strategies, through a stop work order from PSPC. While investigations are ongoing, they are committed to act on findings from all audits and reviews to inform the future of these contractual arrangements. The CBSA will continue to work with Public Services and Procurement Canada to improve procurement practices and processes. Madam Speaker, I'll conclude by stating that the current investigations should not in any way undervalue or dishonor the incredible work that the frontline border officers and all CBSA employees do every single day to serve and protect Canadian citizens at the border and in support of our country's prosperity. Thank you.
Member Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Madam Speaker, in the midst of this gross corruption scandal, we continue to get bureaucratic non-answers from this NDP Liberal government. I had a very simple question that wasn't answered. I will ask that simple question again. Why were 2 senior public servants suspended without pay in the middle of an investigation only after they had offered testimony critical of more senior public servants and the government? Why were they suspended after their testimony?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you. We understand and take very seriously the concerns that have been expressed by the honourable member. This government is committed to transparency and accountability. The CBSA and the RCMP are investigating the allegations, and the government welcomes these ongoing investigations. The CBSA was fully engaged with the Office of Procurement Ombud and will implement its recommendations. The agency will also make improvements based on the upcoming report of the Officer of the Auditor General and its own internal review of contracting. The President has also already implemented measures to strengthen and improve procurement processes and internal controls. Madam Speaker, I assure you and all Canadians that this government will continue to prioritize efficiency, accountability, and transparency in the management of public resources.